Hello everybody and welcome to a rather rainy, dull day outside, which means it's perfect for looking through a sketchbook. A couple of weeks ago I posted my first sketchbook tour and said that I rarely finish them because I've got so many on the go at once. And that's actually true. However, since I've said that, I've jinxed myself and finished about 3. So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to be really grown up about it and go through all of the ones that I've got started. I don't know why I've got so many started. I mean, some do have different formats, like I have square ones and I have portrait format ones and I have landscape, so that's an excuse. But to have several of the same sort started at once, that's just silly. So I'm on a mission now to go through all of my sketchbooks, and I have about 30 altogether, I think, and finish them. Some of them, I don't know. Some of them I should never have bought. One of them I bought thinking it was bigger because I didn't read properly, and it's absolutely tiny. It's about this big, so that's my Stillman and Burn. So I love the paper, but I don't love the size of the sketchbook. So that's going to take a while, but no. So we are on a mission. Last night, I finished another one. Now, I started this in November 23, so that's not too bad, actually. And has it got a lot of variation in it? So let's get started here, and I'll show you through it. First one is one of my pretty classic townscapes with mixed media. This one started out with gouache, somewhere in the south of England, Bath, I think. Photo that was taken on a holiday a while ago and sort of put somewhere and dug out again. I thought, oh yeah, I think I may have taken it to be painted from and sketched from, but then it went into a box and we moved. So you know what it's like. So anyway, this is gouache and over the top colour pencil and then some marker. When I say marker in this case, I'm talking about a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Food nib. And I think I've used my sign pen from Pentel there in the back trees because they're not black. But other than that, it's all my coloured pencils over gouache. And I really love to do these messy, muddy gouache. I use gouache in a really muddy way to get a muted colour. I don't want it to be too bright, so this is perfect. This one here was stamping with a large stamp because I was experimenting with my jelly plate. So more about that later. That's coming. And these here are some leaf experiments that I did for my patrons for Christmas. We did a fun Christmas thing. It's still up on my Patreon site, so by all means, if you want to see more of this sort of thing that you're seeing in this sketchbook, I've put a link in below, so do go and check that out. And you would be most welcome to join us. And this is one of the things that we did at Christmas. I had a whole lot of little fun things that I thought were nice. Practicing with texture, practicing some folk arty stuff. You might wonder why my art channel and my Patreon also are called the Folk Art Factory. Well, I design handbag patterns and they're called Folk Art Factory as well. It's because my first ever enterprise was folk art back in the 90s when I still lived in Australia. And yeah, I was having a bit of a play because I had a space and I wondered whether I could get the sort of commas and strokes required with acrylic markers, and no, you can't. These are horrible. So that's what I can do with a brush, and I did these with coloured pencil because, again, sitting, doodling, filling spaces, making marks, that's what your sketchbook is all about. Oh gosh, excuse me, I'm so breathless this morning. Bit of an allergy attack, I'm not going to lie. So, you know, heating on springtime, even though it's raining, you would think it's a bit better, but no, it's not. So that's why I have not been running away from anything large, trust me. Here, like I said, with my jelly plate, I was just practicing with some textures and different things with acrylic layers, which I really love. And then, of course, it didn't have anything on it, so I had to put something on it. So I thought, well, some daisies and leaves and bits and pieces. This is how a sketchbook page should be. You will see later on in this how sketchbook pages are for me quite often. And the reason for that is because I have huge amounts of artwork on the walls already, inherited over quite a few hundred years actually from family. and we've got about 400 or 500 paintings on the wall. I don't want any more on the wall unless it's really special. So that's another reason I love my sketchbooks. I love to play in them, but I also love to do finished artworks in them and then shut the book and put it on a bookshelf so that I don't have to put it, I don't feel obliged to put it on the wall. For some reason, I don't know why I feel obliged, but I feel obliged. Okay, so apple and some leaves and my holly and things like that, just playing around making marks. This one is the Landscape Art Club Challenge in December. It was the Alhambra Palace in Spain, and yeah, I thought it was a really nice photo they put up. They have some fabulous photos. Actually, I haven't put my thing in this week yet, and gosh, it's Wednesday, losing track, so I better do that because I do like to take part in their challenge each week. This was the December the 10th that week. I have a library stamp, one of these old-fashioned ones that I love to see in the library, and it makes a fabulous sketchbook stamp. Yeah, oxygen to the brain problem now. It makes a great way of recording when I've done things. I don't always remember to do it, which is silly because I have the stamp right out next to me. Also that same week, these are some of my favourite sorts of landscapes that I do. Then they're pretty much made up, to be fair. Different elements. Sometimes there's something out of a photo, like there might be a tree or a house or something, but the rest is just made up to fit. This one is, actually no, these are both soft pastels with mixed media over the top. So there's some soft pastels, and then I've done the usual effects there. And I have a tutorial for that as well over on Patreon. I hate to say it, but you know, that's where I put the long tutorials because, yeah, something special for my Patreons. So step-by-step sort of things, not these specific ones, but this specific technique. So it starts out with soft pastels, and then I go over the top, sometimes with gouache, always with coloured pencils on top of that, and then some fine liners like my Tombows here. And there is some more with the food nib pen that I showed you before and my pentel, and just making marks and playing around. But I love these skies that you can get with soft pastel, and it's nothing that's it's been well treated to stop that. Then back in Germany, these were in Britain, back in Germany, the neighbour's shed. It's a really nice shed. And on this particular occasion, which was also in December 23, the trees were just fabulous. What I want to do with my trees to develop them is these particular ones have a really upright growth. I'd like to do some sideways variation occasionally, but this is what's actually out there, so that's fair. Love doing these bricks, and my resist technique on the timber, it always looks nice. It gives a really nice muted and mellow effect. But yeah, to be honest, some of the sheds here are better than houses that I've seen, to be fair. Really nice farm area that we live in, and it's a cute little village. This is the town that we belong to, which is, again, it's a nice tiny, it's quite small, but it's got a few things that you need day to day. But one thing it's got is this beautiful farmstead that's several hundred years old, as you would expect in Germany. And I suspect that there were no relatives who were interested in inheriting the farm, so that the people gave it finally to the government, and the government now maintain it as a tourist centre, and you can go and walk around, and all the old buildings, they're all original. They're not made for tourists, and they're not done up for tourists. They're just beautifully maintained in their original condition. And there's a duck pond, and it's got frogs in it. It's just stunning, and church in the background, so all good. Sometimes what I've done here with my pastels is to create a sort of a, you know, the haze you get when you look through winter trees and so forth. But I'm kind of triggered by looking at it sometimes because I grew up in Australia, and a glow like that in the sky meant there was a bushfire somewhere. So it's kind of weird. This one's not so bad for some reason, probably because I put some leaves on it. I mean, there are leaves on this too, but there you go. Who knows what triggers people. Another view of the same little village. It's got lots of these little farm buildings and thatched. Some of them are thatched, some of them not. there's an old well from back in the day. It's just stunning. Cambridge, so Britain, again mixed media, pastels in the sky and pastels in the trees and things like that, gouache on the buildings, and then in with coloured pencils and markers and all sorts of things like that. And I don't really like painting people very much. However, I'm trying to make myself put people in things because that sort of helps the scene along a little bit. It kind of looks a little bit post-apocalyptic if you've always got your scenes and there should be people in it because it's a town and it should be populated, but it isn't. It can look a bit, to me, it looks a little bit weird. So I'm trying to make myself put people in things like that. We lived in Norfolk for 9 years. This is Norfolk Broads. And yeah, love that. Moving into January now, just some quick sketches. Sometimes I don't know what I want to sketch and sometimes I don't feel like sketching, but I need my daily art practice. And so sometimes just putting some marks onto paper is brilliant. Germany, we live in a big national park that is covered in heathland, and in August it all comes out and you've got this fabulous purple carpet everywhere. So on this particular occasion, which is a state secret since I haven't stamped it anyway, obviously sometime after the 3rd of January, I'm thinking, and before the 7th of January. So if you're interested in, if you're writing a book or want to put up a plaque or anything, that week. So yeah, just the heather, and this has got a little bit of oil pastel over the top as well, which, so it started off with soft pastels, and I think this is mainly soft pastel to get the background colours in, and then over the top with coloured pencils, fine liners. There's some acrylic marker here, and I think there is a little bit, yes, there's some oil pastel, I can see it, and different bits there for the foreground. And Burb Fest 2024, which I tried so hard to keep up with, but unfortunately January's great because it's slow-ish. I try to get everything done with my magazine work because I write patterns and sewing patterns and quilting patterns, bag patterns, that sort of thing for magazines and books. So any commissions I've got, I try to get them out the way before Christmas because I don't want them to go over into the new year, which means in January I have this false sense of I don't have any work. Well, yes, I do, but I've done it already, sort of thing, before Tristan comes home for Christmas and stuff like that. So the first week in January meant that I could paint birds and sketch birds. So I did that. Liquid watercolour background here and just some sketchy birds. I love the way with Burb Fest they always choose such unusual ones, because if I'm not pushed, I will go back and paint the same wren or robin or blackbird. I love blackbirds, and I will paint those, sketch them, draw them, collage them, but it's the same bloody bird. So basically now I've done a scarlet ibis and a blue throat, and moving on, that was a landscape art club that got into the mix here as well for our week in Switzerland. Love painting shadows on snow, it's great. Then back to Burb Fest with a king penguin, cerulean warbler, white crested helmet shrike. Honestly, if you weren't told that these birds existed, you'd never guess. So those, and again, also trying not to put black backgrounds in everything or mess. I really like this background because it's just some colours and some textures, not an actual picture and putting it into a picture. These aren't really a picture either, but sometimes I can and will. But these didn't do anything at all. The colours down the side. Yeah, curl-crested aracari, never heard of them. I would have thought it's a toucan family, and it may still be, actually. Toucan, do I want to say toucan? Yes, toucan, the one with the big beak, that's the one. And then a crested caracara. So we've got a curl-crested aracari and a crested caracara. So different birds. And again, I like this background. It's quite minimalist, but it's textured. Texture is everything with me. If I had to boil everything down to one thing. And these all start out with gouache. These underneath gouache, colour pencil, and various other things over the top. Quite often a little bit of Ecoline brush. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm lying to you there. These are not gouache at all. These are Ecoline brush markers. You may have seen me putting one away when I was cleaning the desk when we started. This, and that's my favourite one. It's barely working anymore, even though I've refilled it. That is my favourite one. It's the warm grey. However, that's not always the one you need. But these are, I apologise, these are Ecoline brush markers, and then coloured pencil and marker details over the top. So yeah, this one here, brown hooded kingfisher. This is the most terrifying thing I have ever sketched. It gave me nightmares. I had to sleep with the whole light on. It's a bateleur eagle, and yeah, it was interesting though. And again, I did it first of all with the Ecoline brush markers, then coloured pencils over the top. But I thought, bloody hell, if you were a mouse and you saw that, it's bad enough being a human and seeing that. Right, moving swiftly on. This was one of my first collages. Now, I don't know why I have resisted collage for so long. I'm not really into the sort of collage that sends a political message of any kind. My art, quite famously for people who know me, my art teacher in high school told me that I would never amount to anything artistically because all I could do was paint pretty pictures, that they didn't have any meaning. Well, that is the meaning, the fact that they're pretty pictures, and I'll take that, pretty pictures, and they make me feel happy and hopefully make other people feel happy as well. He wanted everything to have a political meaning. This was in the 80s when that was important as well. I mean, it's still important, I suspect. I don't want to do it. I want pretty pictures. So this is our potting shed. The mouse wasn't actually there because if it had been, I wouldn't have been. And the neighbour's cat who visits. And I was putting my padron chilies in on the 17th of January or thereabouts. I decided to do them a bit earlier this year because last year they didn't have a long enough growing season. So this year, because in Germany, it's, I mean, we're not really in chili growing area, but we do grow lots of padron chilies. They're really nice. So my first collage, bit of textured paper, bit of gouache in the background, painted the cat on. The packet of seed, the mouse is all collaged, and then over the top with coloured pencils. Absolutely love my coloured pencils. As you may have glimpsed in the beginning of the video when I was putting them away, I have a few. This one here is Let It Blossom 2024, another challenge that I'm trying to keep up with as work is sort of mounting up in a different area, but I'm still trying to stay with this one. This one's Sunflower, and that's the 1st of February, and that was the first one they had. Then, back to Landscape Art Club. This week it was in somewhere in Africa. Oh gosh, I cannot remember. Senegal, I think. I believe it was Senegal. And what I've done here is I've done the background and the sky and all of the foreground here in gouache. Really, really messy gouache. And what I do is I use, this is a DecoArt Traditions blender mop. And what I can do with this, because it hasn't got a nice point that I want to preserve like some of the round brushes, I can actually scrub the paint on and get this really nice, very, very, well, it's kind of muddy, but it's also it's textured and it's nice, this background with gouache, and I love doing it like that. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video using that, and I shall. I know I've got one planned, and I've done a few for my patrons as well, but we can do something over here as well. And the giraffe, this is my first ever giraffe. I've always wanted to do one, but I've never sort of had any reason to, apart from just doing it because I don't like the front leg. There's something not right with that, but the rest of I like this bit. That's all right. And that's collaged. So I basically drew him onto another piece of paper and cut him out and then stuck him down onto my background, which really worked. And it works particularly well because when you've put too many layers onto a background, you get too much flattening of the tooth in the paper, and it gets to a point where it will not accept any more layers. With collage, I didn't do that in this situation, but if you have done that, you can come back in and make something with collage and stick it over the top, and you're basically giving yourself all your tooth back, and you can start again on that particular thing. So that's what I've done there. Reprisal of my background I quite liked here, again for Let It Blossom 2024, and this was my floral challenge, and Protea, which, figuring because African native, that worked well as a double spread. And then actually this was also left over from Senegal. They had this fabulous photo which was basically like this, but this tiny little blue bird in the background, and we worked out amongst us what it was, and then I found one and collaged it. So it's actually quite 3D. I'm not sure if the camera is going to pick that up, but again, starting with gouache in the background, gouache tree, lots and lots of super fine acrylic marker, and then collage over the top. And the thing I'm finding that I'm loving for collaging birds are my Derwent Inktense pencils for colouring the papers, because I can make a really nice motley textured looking paper, then cut it out to make a quite a nice effect of a bird. So that's that one, and it's a long-tailed starling of some description. I've cleverly forgotten to write it down, but I think that's what it is. I love this one. This is not my usual colour palette, and it's, yeah, our cherry tree is blossoming, and we have these little birds in the tree, the great tits and cold tits and things like that, and blue tits, all the beautiful little birds. This one is a cold tit, I think, or a great, don't know. Anyway, that's all collaged, and again, it's sort of like a 3D. Yeah, even though it's 3D and quite textured, my sketchbook does close, sort of. Well, it does. It closes. It's no worse than anything else, actually. And oh bloody hell, there we go. So most of the cherry blossoms that are up front and center are collaged. The leaves are collaged. The background is all liquid watercolor, very scrubbily put down because I didn't want good coverage. I wanted this sort of coverage so that I can, what I do is I put a scrubby background down, so with a brush that doesn't matter, so either an old one or one that never had a tip to begin with, and then I find, so I'll look at that and I'll say, well, look there, for example, if I was making a tree out of that, I can sort of see a bit of tree there and a bit of tree there. So I'll highlight those bits, and that's where you get this sort of effect. So I've gone over the green with my light turquoise Derwent Light Fast pencil to get this effect. And I really like that in the sky. I used it on my blackbirds too, which I cannot grab because I've put them somewhere. Gosh. No idea. So yeah, those are, it's a great way to make a background that looks like you might be looking at the sky, or either that or lighter trees. But of course, there's not much leaf action at the moment. I drew some of these further back blossoms in, and as I said, the leaves are all made individually. And thank you, Derwent Inktense, for that. And all these. I love the way you can layer it up and get quite a lot of texture, but above all, oh my goodness, addicted. Back to Let It Blossom 2023. Edelweiss was the prompt, and again, I have cleverly forgotten to date it, so at some point. I'd like to put some more into this, actually, to be fair. I don't feel it's finished in the way this one is. This was the same challenge, Let It Blossom, and it was pansies on this particular day, and I love pansies. So again, all made with individual pieces of white paper and stuck in. I don't stick them down completely because it feels as though it's a little bit more real to not glue everything flat. So I'll leave a margin where I put the glue so that the glue is right there and it's stuck. It's not going anywhere, but it looks a bit dimensional. So I would like to do some more because I do love Edelweiss, and I live in Germany, so it's kind of, it might be a law or something, and I don't want to risk that. So I'm going to put some more into that later on and actually finish it properly. This one, again, is a scrubby liquid watercolour background. And when I say liquid watercolors, the ones I use are Ecoline liquid watercolors, and they got a pipette so you can sort of measure out quite precisely what's needed. And I have my own green palette that I've mixed with recipes, which is a video coming up on my Patreon very soon. So if you're interested in liquid watercolor, there's a whole video on it up there already, but I'm going to do an additional one with some recipes that are just for my patrons. So I've mixed some greens. That's what you're seeing in here. They're easy to mix. They're fabulous, actually. And there are a couple of little tricks I've learned the hard way. And so excellent. Moving on, watercolor background, some Tombow action here with the leaves. And then my Inktense pencils to create the petals. I made a little snail. I made that for another picture that I was doing, actually. That's in another sketchbook. You will see that in the next reveal. And some rocks, because last week we did collage seagulls on again on Patreon. That was my project for the last 3 weeks. Actually, I went slowly through a collage seagull project, and I had some rocks left over, so I thought, well, they can go as pebbles in my little garden. And a seal. It is not a seal, it is a snail. A snail for the garden as well, and pansies. And these were great fun. Fabulous. Kingfisher. By this point, I was dedicated to finishing this sketchbook off because I was so close. This is a jelly printed background with lots of mottly texture like you saw in the other one back here, except in greens instead. And Kingfisher, it was really nice to make him too. I do the body pretty much with the Inktense pencils and markers and bits and pieces like that. And then I concentrate for the collage bit on, even though the whole bird is collage, so the whole thing is collaged and stuck down, but I concentrate on the wings and the tail for the actual collaging individual feathers. The rest is all just drawn onto the piece of paper that I will then stick the wings on, stick the whole things in, if that makes sense. Leaves, the branches, actually these branches are collaged as well. Sometimes I do the branches in gouache, sometimes I collage them. This time was collaged, and all of the leaves were little bits and pieces of paper. I make cards as well as art, and I love doing that, but it means I've got lots and lots of scrap paper. So what I've done is I've put them into bags. Not wild about using the plastic bags, but I'll use these until the wheels fall off them. So all these little bits that I've got from my card making, I can't cut much else out of them with dies, mostly, because they get very fiddly. But I can, funny enough, cut them with scissors. So these bits here, even though they've had a letter cut out of them, for example, there is still enough room there to cut a feather. So with my little scissors, I can just shape that up and then cut. And that's the basic feather shape that I use. I do more to it, of course, but this is mainly about looking through the sketchbook rather than anything else. But that's the feather shape I use. So even though that looked like a waste of paper, there is even more. I can make little feathers out of that, and they're not too difficult, funny enough, to cut out. So I keep all of that from my card making stuff, as well as creating new stuff with my Inktense pencils, which I love. And then I've gone over these with some acrylic marker as well, just to make sure that they're really nice and vibrant. Another landscape. Again, this one was gouache. I just really wanted to have a relax last night, and I thought, okay, cherry blossom, houses, landscape, foreground interest that is slightly darker that leads you out into the picture, and some background trees. So just do it. And so this doesn't, you won't find this anywhere. It doesn't really exist. So I just sketched and drew until I felt amazing, which was by the end of the sketch. So all just no collage there, just all just mixed media. And I'm going to have to, this book is suffering somewhat. It's been, it's going to come apart at some point. Finally, I don't paint people very often. However, every now and again, I really love these quite folksy looking sketches of people, and not important people, just ordinary people, people's grandmothers and mothers and great aunts, and the sort of people who know how to make bread and garden and that sort of thing, because those are the women I grew up with, and that they passed those things on to me. My legacy from my grandparents is super valuable because I can make bread, I can grow things, and this is the sort of person that taught me to do those things. So they weren't particularly glamorous looking people. They weren't particularly, noteworthy in any other way except to me. But they taught me lots and lots of things on how to live the sort of life that they'd lived. And my nana, this is not necessarily her, but you could squint and think, you know what, that could be. She raised 6 children through the Great Depression, and they lived in the countryside in what can only be described now as deprivation, but nobody died and everybody came through it with some skills. So this is my thank you to the women who taught me how to do what they could do. And a few men, to be fair. I learnt from everybody. I have got skills from my grandfather too. This one here I was cleaning off a stamp, and because it was a skull, I decided pirate, so he had to have a gold tooth. I think I was a bit hysterical by this point. But that is the end of this sketchbook. So I do hope you enjoyed that tour. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Please do remember to subscribe and like. It helps my channel immensely. And if you like my painting style, come and join us on Patreon. You can join for as little as €6.50 a month. I have a €4 tier, but you know what it's like with these things. That's mainly the tip jar sort of thing. But the action starts at €6.50 a month, which is around about $10 American, slightly less than £10, I think. So I've tried to keep it reasonable is what I'm saying. So do consider joining, and I would love to see you there. But until next time, until the next thing, I don't know, I think I've got something planned for next week. I do, actually, and it's a surprise. So I'll see you back here next week. Have a fabulous day. Bye.